I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our conversation before we get into your work by asking 4 years ago, this pandemic, we were trying to figure out how long is it going to last, all the ramifications. How did you get
Mhm.
through that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Oh, that's a great question. So pre-pandemic, my business was focused on live events. So I basically like I'm a copywriter for live events. So we would script the live event out. We would start with the sales process, backtrack the whole event. I would build the speeches. I would teach people how to speak on stage. Then I would go MC them, manage the event, and run sales. Um, I worked with 3 to 5 clients a year. Had a very good business doing that. When the pandemic happened, we pivoted into I had always thrown stones at virtual events. So I first went into webinars, and then we did challenges and virtual events on the back end of that. The What also came out of the pandemic was I held more and more events for people in the real estate space, um, both fundraising for deals and teaching people how to do real estate, how to shorten their retirement curve. Um, I met my now partner during that time, and he ended up buying my events business, and I became the CEO of his business. So we're now in the real estate space, both fundraising and teaching people how to do real estate.
So, if I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students right now and you had to explain what you do on a daily basis, it's
Yep.
career day, and one of the kids is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
I help people retire 20 years faster by paying zero in taxes through real estate.
Wow. Okay. What did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
A race car driver, an
Okay.
astronaut.
Yeah. All
Those
all
were
the all the good kid things.
Yeah, I actually saw the Challenger blow up when I was a kid. I don't know if you remember that,
Oh
but I
yeah.
was there live for that, and that changed my
Wow.
dreams from not being an astronaut. Um, I was a I was an entrepreneur from a young age. There's a story I can tell this on the podcast if you want.
Sure.
Um, I was 8 and I really wanted them. Air Jordans had just come out. I really wanted them for school, and my mom sat me down and lectured me about how I couldn't have them. I threw a tantrum in the middle of the mall. She told me I needed to get a job. She was like, "If you want those shoes, then you gotta go get a job." Thing that would shut me up. I went and got a lawnmower. I made enough that day. I went home and mowed enough yards. I went and bought the shoes, and then my mom thought I had stolen them. Um, and that was like my first experience with entrepreneurship and hustling.
Wow. That's a great story. I remember I'm 51, so I remember in 86 when that shuttle exploded. And
Mhm.
the thing that was so wild about that was that all of us kids were waiting for that lesson from Christy McAuliffe. She was going to teach.
Yeah, from outer space.
I
Yep.
know. We're all waiting for it. But the thing that I realize about that time, no matter what you think about Ronald Reagan and that 8 years that he had, he could weave together a speech that would comfort everybody. And I still remember that speech that night because it was one of those during that time, he got shot, the Challenger happened. There was a couple magnanimous things.
Mhm.
Lennon was shot during that kind of 80s lurch. But I remember that speech that night when he said that the astronauts were going up to touch the face of God. And just the way the cadence and the way that he calmed everybody was just, I will never forget that. And it's in this modern realm of what we're living through with politics, we don't get that anymore. There used to be leaders that were leaders and they comforted you during times that were distressful.
It's very I try not to get too political, but it is something we actually were talking about the other night. Like Ronald Reagan's economics were not that different than Trump. I understand like we're 30 years later, whatever, but his economics were not that different. What was different about Reagan is that he could connect with people. He was a great orator. He understood how to connect and, to your point, how to comfort people. I agree 100%. That is if I understand Trump likes to be polarizing. He loves to stir the pot. If he had more of the Ronald Reagan esque, he would have all of the votes. And politicians are now much more interested in division than collaboration,
Absolutely.
and that is honestly what's going to it's what's tearing our world apart now.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to be able to have a conversation. You're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. We used to be able to sit down and have dinner and like talk about our differences, but nobody got upset. It wasn't, I hate you, you're a horrible person. Now it's, you don't believe like I do, you're horrible. And now with like cancel culture, it's like, I'm cutting you off. Well, that's the worst thing you could do because then you live in an echo chamber, right? Um,
Yeah, it is wild, man, how even mentioning cancel culture, how we've gotten addicted to this very sick movement of just it's almost like a movie every day. Who's going to be the next person? And just like with politics, the thing that I find really reassuring, I've been doing podcasting more specifically in the jazz realm since 2011. So I'm still kind of freaked out that podcasting has become this really big global hip thing now. But I find that doing this, it's therapy. I think we're all much more alike. I think we're all much more unified. I think there's way more than we see eye to eye on. And it is like you said. I remember years ago when I started a job, I was talking to someone about the election between, I think, Clinton and Dole, and we were both on very different sides, but we became best friends and it was all good. And we would have the political banner. We'd meet up after work and have drinks and go for it, and it was fine. But in the next sentence, we talk about the top 5 albums you would get if you wanted to go to an island, you know? It was all
right.
part of the conversational tone, you
Like
know?
you didn't hate each other, and you weren't looking for things that were different. I think
Right.
the you used to look for things that were the same, and like, how can I add value to this person? And how can I actually communicate? Now it's me, and I'm all that matters. And if you don't agree, screw you, you're wrong, I'm right. And it's like none of that is healthy
No,
for anybody
no.
or for our country as a whole. Like,
Yeah,
sad.
the pendulum definitely swings in this life, and hopefully it will swing in a different direction because we need it bad.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're obviously very highly driven and accomplished in your career. Who's been a motivator or a hero for you in that drive?
Man, the without sounding cliche, Tony Robbins, huge. Just like I went to a Tony event in 2012. I had read one or two of his books, great books, and then I went to an event in 2012, and that kind of shook the foundations and got me moving in the right direction. I would say I've come back to him once or twice. He has some great advice. He has the ability to get people moving and get people emotional. The Beyond that though, you need people that help you take action, right? Um Tony's very good at getting you emotional. The I'm trying to think of other books that I would point to or people. I mean, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, definitely those people. Dan Kennedy was my first mentor in the business space. Dan is the godfather of direct marketing. I think I have gone through pretty much everything he's ever done. Very influential in growth and in thought process. Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, couple different reasons I would mention Tim. As much what to do as what not to do. I think he's a little bit of a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Um, if you ask, he would say that he is not very happy. He would say that he has a lot of anxiety. I think he's very honest about this stuff. Um, and I think there becomes a point where you just optimize for the sake of optimization. If you're already 98% of the way there and you're trying to optimize the last little bit, you realize that there is no last little bit and you're stuck in this loop of trying to optimize instead of just saying, I'm happy. Like,
Yeah.
I enjoy, I'm going to find joy in this, regardless of whether it's perfectly optimized or not.
Yeah.
But Tim has a lot of good stuff to share as well. He's a very good interviewer. I've gotten a lot from his podcasts, and his way of operating. He's very thoughtful. He asks a lot of good questions.
So you may have already answered this, but if you could meet one person alive on the planet that you find fascinating, who would that be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Probably Elon Musk
Okay.
be my answer. I think he would. Elon Musk. I'm going to give you a top three or four. Elon Musk, Tim Cook, um, I think would be those two would be up there. Tim Ferriss would be interesting. Arnold Schwarzenegger would be
Yeah.
great. That I know that those are probably pretty common answers, but I think they have a lot to share. I wouldn't necessarily ask them about the mainstream things. I would ask them more about their thought processes and how they interviewing somebody, you know this, you interview a lot of people, you learn as much from what they don't say or their cadence of answer or their style of answers as opposed to what they actually say.
It you're totally right, and it's interesting because I've seen Elon on Rogan, and I've really looked into, like, how he answers and the way he does it and what his whole thing is, and I think Elon's gotten to a point where he's rounding this corner where he doesn't care anymore. Like, there's parts of him that want to, like, do the political answer, and then you could just kinda see him stop and be like, "Nope," and then he just goes in. But he
Yeah.
has to be careful because he operates on a different wavelength. If he really starts going at it, no one's gonna understand what he's talking about.
Well, I think that is very true. I think that is so true. He ends up going off and I don't think it's about not I think you're right. I think he doesn't care and he's like, screw it, I'm just gonna say whatever I think. Um, I don't think that is bad in and of itself, but I do think he operates on some completely different world. I would be really interested if he could break down. There was a video that I saw on YouTube of him where he was teaching his kids class. So he had like 3 or 4 of his kids together and then their class, and he spent 2 days teaching them. And it was the highlights from that. And I feel like his thought processes on how he makes decisions are completely different than most people. I think Jeff Bezos, same way.
Yeah,
Jeff has given a lot of interviews where his thought process at how that's why I would want to interview Tim Cook as well. Their thought process on how they make decisions and get to answers quickly and efficiently in a way that obviously moves the ball forward a lot, all of them would probably be, you would say, are difficult to work for unless you're a high performing individual. If you look at the people that really like working for those people, it's because they're high performing and they can self manage.
mhm,
It's the
yeah,
people that can't self manage that hate having that force.
yeah,
I think they would all give very good feedback on how to make decisions. And really, that's if you cut to the chase, if we learn how to make good decisions and how to hold ourselves to accountability for taking action on those are the two things that lead to the most successful life. That and just learning joy, right?
yeah, yeah. So let's get to the marrow and the gasoline that fuels you. Every day you wake up and you do your work and you do your job and you have all these goals. What is that ultimate motivation for you to not only do a good job, but to evolve also on a cellular level as a human being?
Growth. I love learning. Everything that I have done in life is because I first enjoyed learning about it, and then I enjoy implementing it, and I enjoy seeing concrete results of it. The story going back to the story of me as a kid, right? I rem it's hard because I was 8. Right? But, like, going back, I remember having like, throwing that tantrum on the mall bench and being like, "I have to have those shoes, I have to have them." And then, like, latching onto this idea of, "Okay, I have to go get a job, I have to make enough money to buy those shoes." My mom said that in passing. I would imagine there are thousands of parents who say the exact same thing to their kid, right? But for some reason, I took that and on the drive home from the mall, which was probably a 15-minute drive, I somehow determined I was going to get the lawnmower and go knock on doors. And I did that day until I mowed enough yards to buy $100 pair of shoes.
Yeah.
I think it was probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 yards. I don't really remember, but I vaguely remember walking door to door. I remember I had to go fill up on gas and like somehow that was the way that I solved that, right? But it
Yeah.
was like that learning and growth cycle. And then I went home and I was really proud of it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go do that again. By the time I was 10, I had 3 grand saved up as a 10-year-old in a shoebox. Like, I don't, and then that led to like, that's the problem solving. We get excited about problem solving something about learning, about aggregating information, and that is what makes me grow every single day. It's not being stuck in the details. It's not even necessarily doing hard work. There's some reward in that, but it's learning about the thing, looking at a complex problem, breaking it apart, putting it back together in a way that works better, and then going in and laying that out and having that implemented.
I like this philosophy you've touched on about kind of this macro view of not getting mired in the details, and this is an example. And my day job is as an IT technician for a school district, and when I went to interview for the job, usually you walk in, there might be a few people. When I walked in, there was like 15 people around a huge table. It was all the principals and all the people in the district. I'm like, oh my God. Like the HR person that waves me in is like 4'11", like this little woman, like, come on in, have a bowl of tea. And I come in and there's just all these eyeballs. But I get in
Mhm.
there, and the guy that's going to hire this position is the IT director, and he's directly on the other side of the room. And he said that he was looking for two things. Okay. And in IT, you can have all these certifications, all these degrees, all these years of experience. And he broke it down to two things. He said, I'm looking for two things in the person I hire: a good attitude and a willingness to learn. And that's the kind of guy that he is. And he's been probably my favorite boss that I've ever had. He broke it down and it was totally true. He lived that. Now, we went out and did our job. There was details, but
Yeah.
it was that idea that if you're getting in, especially into technology, it's always evolving, it's always changing. Moore's law, you got to be adaptable, but you also have to have a good attitude. And it's so true to what you're saying. Reading between the lines of your philosophy, that's kind of what you're getting at, is the macro has to make sense before you hone in on the details.
Yeah. I absolutely. You To use your reference around the job, there are a lot of people who might have a phenomenal resume with all the certifications and all the little details. But at the end of the day, if they're bitter and they show up to work and they don't want to work and they want to complain and they want to, you know, they're they're looking for things to be unhappy about.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how many certifications they have, they're not going to get the job done. Whereas somebody who has a great attitude, even though they might not have any of the detailed stuff, they'll still either figure it out or they'll find somebody that can do it. I mean, we see that a lot. It there one of my A book that I recommend to a lot of people is called Who Not How, and it's about identifying the person that can do the job for you and either hiring them or bartering with them or somehow you like exchanging value with them to get that thing done, right? You're really good at IT. I'm horrible at IT. Details are not my thing. But but somebody who is super detail oriented is not big picture oriented, and
Yeah.
I can trade with them.
Yeah, for sure. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
That's a good one. Jeez. Oof. Um, there are three of them that come to mind. I know you asked for one. The first and biggest is treat other people how you'd want to be treated. If you if you live that, if you really live that, and nobody is perfect at it, people will reciprocate. Um, that is like it just makes for a better life. Makes for happier people around you. It makes for like everything is better if you tend to treat people that way. That does not mean, I think the lesson I had to learn with that is that doesn't mean don't have boundaries. um I want to treat other people in a great way. That doesn't mean that I need to give up. I used to be the guy that worked 15 hours a day and always had meetings and all of that stuff. Doesn't mean not having boundaries. The balance to that is having healthy boundaries and living within those, but still being kind, gracious, caring towards other people. I think that's one. Um, if I had to give one other one, I would say simple. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Simple always beats complex.
Yeah.
Um, there are times that you need to be complex and you need to have some things going, but start with simple.
Yeah.
If it works with simple, when you add in some complexity, it'll probably get better, but don't add complexity just for the sake of complexity. And third one would be save 10% of everything you make. If you have money in the bank, you will show up as a different person. And I argue this a lot with people. We teach, so we have a nonprofit and we teach at schools. We teach basic budgeting skills, financial literacy for high schoolers. And we usually have their parents come in, and I'll share the like basic budget, 10% to church or charity, 10% in long-term savings, 10% in short-term savings, live on 70% of what you make. Um, and I'll have parents argue with me about how they just cannot save 10%. Um, and I challenge everybody that you absolutely can. 10% of what you make, if you have it either removed from your paycheck before you ever see it and put it in a different account, or if you work as a waiter or bartender, I used to work in the restaurant industry. If you just take 10% every day and just stuff it away, before you know it, you wake up and you have a lot of money, and that will that changes the way you show up in life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, of all of the things that you've done and accomplished and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Helping others. At the end of the day, like if I can help other people, whether that is with financial freedom or paying less in taxes or just organizing their life in a way that feels better for them, all of those things help other people. And at the end of the day, that's what moves life forward. And that it makes me it makes me proud of what I've done.
So, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a good one. I think I am somebody that is curious about life, probably lets too many details slide. Anyone who knows me probably knows that, like, details are not my thing. I can be pretty hard on myself about that sometimes, but I've kind of come to terms with it. I would say, yeah, good overall person that enjoys life and what life has to offer. I would say that I am an explorer or an explorer or a catalyst for people. I usually bring change pretty rapidly to people's lives. Um, and that's through exploration and curiosity and learning and then applying that to people.
So, let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 17, 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life. What advice would you impart?
And if you knew me when I was 17, um, I would say, I mean, I did a bunch of drugs when I was in high school, so I would say probably stay away from drugs. You should quit drinking, quit drugs. Um, and I would say like I did pretty well money wise when I was in high school and in college. But I would say it's hard, right? Giving yourself advice because I wouldn't change any of the experiences that I had. But I would say probably get involved with real estate earlier. Um, and learn to outsource, learn to delegate faster. I started buying real estate when I was 22 in college, and I did really well, but I did not delegate. I burned out 2005, 2006. I sold everything. I kind of saw the turn coming, but I also was at a point of burnout because I did everything. I was the roofer, the electrician, the plumber, the landlord, like the painter. I did all of it across 100 plus units, 100, 140-ish, 130-ish units. Um, and that led to immense unhappiness, just in the fact that I had zero free time and was rushing around all the time. Um, and that is not worth any amount of money.
Yeah.
Um, so that's I think I would if I could go back and give that me advice, it would be maybe buy less properties because I bought some properties I shouldn't have bought, but also delegate out all the other stuff. Buy the properties that cash flow enough to pay to have all of that handled so that you have some free time.
Yeah,
Much better answer.
absolutely. So let's say we get off this call, a time machine pulls up, and you can go back in the history of humanity and see one event with your own eyes. Where are you going?
Ooh, crucifixion.
Okay.
I'm a Christian. I think that would be a very I mean, that was a fast answer. And it's a little bit on the morbid side, I guess, but it maybe the resurrection would be the better. Um, I think there's a lot of things that you could learn. And I mean, the Bible, I know depending on who you listen, are you a Christian? Are you
I hold a lot of beliefs that teeter between both the Christian faith and the Buddhist faith. I kind of see a holistic that like a holistic spiritual kind of thing.
sure? I guess the reason I asked, like, part of the Christian church believes that the Bible is the word of God and it is
Right.
100% accurate. And then you have the other side who says, it's a 2,000-year-old book that has been translated numerous times. Like, I'm sure we have missed some things in the translation, or
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool to go back and see like the Last Supper, like see that whole time period and
Yep.
experience it. The other thing that somebody shared this, a couple months ago, different from Christianity, but we live in a time where if we get sick, we go to the doctor, they give us something, right? It's crazy during COVID. People were like, oh, don't take the vaccine. It might kill it. Like, if we go back just 100 years, half the world was dying of like smallpox. And
Uh-huh.
like, there was a Truman's kid, I believe Truman's son. I might be wrong on this. Somebody will probably misquote me. There was a president and that their son died because he got a blister playing tennis and it got infected. And
Wow.
there wasn't a way to cure it. You think about like smallpox. You go back a little bit further, you go back to like the 1500s, everybody's like, "Oh, I would dominate the world." 95% of the population was ruled by people who did not have high intellect but had bloodlines. And they could order you to go off to war and get slaughtered. And
Yep.
you did it because you didn't have the advocacy that you have today.
Yeah.
Um, I think history is a very strong educator when it comes to things like that. Like, anyone who wants to complain about anything today, it's like even 200 years ago,
Yeah.
right? The Wild West, 1886. Like, you think about all like Billy the Kid, right? Like, I've gone to some of the western towns out here. You think about like, I like to play poker. You think about like, you would be involved in a poker game where people got shot.
Yeah.
That was routine
Uh-huh.
every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, the difference between the world we live in today and the world we live in back then, I think
Oh,
everybody would be benefited to go back in time and spend 2 days and learn. Like, if you lived in ancient Rome, you might be a Roman citizen, but like your life is expendable
uh-huh.
very quickly. The way that I mean, you think about the great philosophers that were some of the smartest people of the time that were either killed or ordered to kill themselves or imprisoned because they had a differing belief that was, history has proved, the correct belief. Just
Yeah.
the earth is flat, the earth is round. There were
Right.
people killed for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that I love that answer because it's totally true. We do live in very privileged times. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that like ancestors couldn't even imagine. It's crazy. It really is. You
I
know.
mean, running water and electricity and a bathroom.
Are you kidding?
Have
Yeah.
you been to I got to go uh to Tibet, and like, their bathrooms are not even outhouses. They're
Yeah.
just holes in the ground,
Yeah. Yeah.
like with some trees,
Yeah.
maybe a shack.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild, man. It really is. And it's modern times. So, hey, if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, get involved with anything, where do they go?
Sure, steve.coffee.
Okay.
That link will take you. You can book a call with me if you're looking to have me speak. We do a lot of just financial literacy training, how to attract money into your life, how to have more of it, how to retire faster and pay less in taxes. You can book me to speak. You can get on my calendar. Or if you're interested in investing, we have a landmines toolkit. It's the 5 biggest landmines that cost people money with investments. That's free. It's all at steve.coffee.
I love it. Steve, this has been fascinating. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Keep doing the great work, man.
Awesome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.